Welcome to an incredibly special episode of Pedder Unplugged. I'm Tabitha Badger, and we've been away for a little while here because there's been an awful lot happening in the Pedder space. Today we're celebrating Professor Jamie Kirkpatrick. Sadly, Jamie passed away earlier this week, but he left a legacy and extraordinary impact on an entire generation of Tasmanians. Anyone who studied any form of environmentalism at the University of Tasmania had Jamie somehow impact on their life. In fact, anyone around Australia who was looking at ecology would have read some of Jamie's work during their time. Jamie was your go-to person to call on for any of your questions that involved Tasmania's unique environment, be it the she oak monoculture up on the domain to the endemic subalpine vegetation that you find on the west coast or deep in the southwest. You could go to him for bushwalking inquiries or, of course, to learn about Lake Pedder. Today's episode is actually a cut-up of an interview that we did with Jamie back in 2023. It was for the film Pedder, The Fault in Tasmania's Wilderness. There's a link to the YouTube version in the show notes so you can have a look at the film if you haven't already. Kudos to the one and only Dan Bruin, who was able to set up a camera and a microphone and have the both of us in the room being able to properly capture Jamie amongst his immense library of books. This is a little bit different to the other podcast episodes because it is a snapshot of an interview. We were throwing as many questions as we could at Jamie in an incredibly short space of time that we were so lucky to spend with him. We wanted to know as much as we possibly could in a succinct, short manner about the ecology of restoring Lake Pedder and the practical implications. But Jamie was also incredibly generous and shared his story from his trip into Lake Pedder as well. As one of Jamie's many former students, my favourite thing about this interview, and I'm sure others will agree, is the sound of his infectious laughter. Convener of the Restore Pedder group, Christine Milne, launched some of Jamie's final books about a week ago, and she has a beautiful message from her final chats with Jamie. She said, "The last conversation I had with Jamie was following a speech I made launching his books only 10 days ago. It was a wonderful day on the domain, and so fitting given how much work he had done to restore the grasslands up there. It was a day of celebration of all that Jamie had contributed to Tasmania and to our conservation community. We reminisced over a few things, but mainly Lake Pedder. I thanked him for all that he had done over the decades to provide scientific evidence to underpin the restoration of the lake and the Serpentine Valley. I assured him that we would never give up campaigning for its restoration, and he replied emphatically, 'It will happen.' And he's right, it will. So please, enjoy this episode of Pedder Unplugged with the one and only, the distinguished Professor Jamie Kirkpatrick."
Okay, and start again, please.
Is it possible to restore Lake Pedder?
It's definitely possible to restore Lake Pedder, and feasible and desirable as well.
There's a few myths or furphies around the ecological restoration might happen. For example, is there a risk that we drain the impoundment or dewater the impoundment and the whole exposed area dries out or fills up with weeds? Is that possible?
It's highly unlikely because there's virtually no weeds within any sort of reasonable distance of the present impoundment, so there's no source of weeds to get in there. The only source is Strathgordon, and it'd be very easy to control any weeds that came in. And the ones that came in, if they were herbaceous weeds like grasses, they would get out-competed virtually within a couple of years anyway. It wouldn't be a problem.
See on any impoundment the erosion around the perimeter that's referred to as the bathtub ring.
Yes.
Is that going to be a permanent scar in the landscape when Pedder's restored?
No. There's, in some situations it might take longer than others to revegetate, but on the slopes the peat moves, which is the accumulation of vegetable matter. move slowly down the slope, so it would obscure the ring very, very soon. Some places they've scraped it off to make false beaches, but they disappear as soon as you get cover of vegetation and it starts to build up peat again. So the peat will build up in that climate at about 14 centimetres over 60 years. So it's done that down at Melaleuca, so it should do it around Strathgordon.
One, I guess, perpetuated furphy is that if you were to drain the impoundment, where the current lake is and the Serpentine Valley would become a big mud pit and full of, they describe it as slime, and it'll be smelly and disgusting.
It'll be a peat pit because the soils are still there. The organic soils are still there under the water, except for the ring. But they drain to some extent, and you'd expect them to be colonised by cryptogams, small plants, to start off with. And what I'd think would be good to do would be to scatter seed all over the area as it drains, so you get lots of shrubs re-establishing and get it going again. So, walking through Buttongrass Moorland, which most of it was, can be an unpleasant experience if lots of people have been walking in it before. But there aren't going to be millions of people walking across the plains. Yeah.
And obviously to dewater the impoundment, the water's got to be let out down the Huon and the Serpentine into the Gordon River.
Yeah.
Now, down the Gordon River is part of the World Heritage Area now.
Yes.
Will releasing a mass amount of water down there, or a degree of water, degrade the World Heritage values of that system?
Unfortunately, they've already been degraded by the change in the flows from the Gordon River Dam. There's a very short stretch of water between the Serpentine Dam and the Gordon River, which has been degraded by not having any water flowing in it. So yeah, it's if done with care, it's not going to make things worse and could make things better. Restore at least a little bit of that system to pre-dam flow. Yeah.
Is there any hope for the Merrimictic Lakes?
Yeah, the Merrimictic Lakes require low flows during summer and a salt wedge to go up the stream, and then a flood to lift the salt into the Merrimictic Lakes, and that was lost with the hydro scheme, and got even worse with the Basslink. So at the moment there's not much hope. The hydro did try to do something at one stage, but it didn't succeed in restoring the biota of the lakes. They did manage to get a little bit of salt water back into them, but I don't think draining Lake Pedder is going to make any difference to that whatsoever. Yeah.
Are there any crucial risks that stand out to you, or conversely, what do you see as the greatest benefit to restoring Pedder?
The greatest benefit of restoring Pedder, I think, is symbolic in turning around the destruction of the planet and restoring something of great value, of great aesthetic value and a great biological value. Having that landscape and the geomorphological feature of the lake itself is of enormous scientific interest, as well as being an absolutely beautiful place. I was fortunate enough to go there just before it was drowned when I first arrived in Tasmania. Yeah.
What was that like?
It was a bizarre experience because I walked for 2 hours across a buttongrass plain, which wasn't very pleasant. I'd never done that before, and arrived there on this beach, and there were planes going in and out, and this absolutely beautiful lake behind them, and people everywhere camped. But you could see how glorious it was through the noise and the hubbub, and yeah, I wish I had been able to be there when it was a place that you went to when you were more or less by yourself in it. Yeah.
Did that visit to Pedder put you on any trajectory for the rest of your life? How did that impact you personally?
Oh, it's just I've been on a long trajectory trying to minimise the harm that we do to nature until we regain our sanity and have a steady state society. But it sort of reconfirmed that. It was a time of despair, really. We didn't really think that we were going to get anywhere in that project of slowing things down. We've got a little way, but not, with so much further to go. The growth society seems to dominate at the higher levels of politics, even now. Yeah, I first went into Pedder and last went into Pedder when I was a 25-year-old. The first year I was teaching at the University of Tasmania and walked across this button grass plain, which was my first experience of a couple of hours walk across button grass plains, and then came out on this amazing beach, absolutely amazing beach, with planes landing right and left and people running up and down, and this incredible burgundy water stretching black to the horizon. And it was a nice day, and the mountains stood up, craggly and, snaggle-toothed in the background. So, I just wished that I could have been there before it was the last chance sort of thing, and everyone was there to soak in the spirituality of it all. But as a scientist, I found it absolutely fascinating as well. I've since learnt that it's a landscape feature that's created by wind action, wind deflation and deposition in a leeward dune, and not quite certain how it gets that beautiful square shape, but there are other lakes like that still on the Central Plateau, just outside the limits of the old glaciation on the Central Plateau that I've worked near and in subsequent years. And the problem that isn't mentioned much is that it's going to be immensely expensive to restore the actual dams to maintain the drowning of Lake Pedder. I mean, why are we doing it? It's a tiny little bit of power, extra power, because it's constrained within 1 or 2 metres of water fluctuation, and it's a globally important phenomenon, World Heritage status, and it's going to be massively expensive, and probably twice as expensive as they say it's going to be to make those dams safe and secure and sound for the next 40 years. Yeah. So, yeah.
Sorry, natural values. We don't talk about the Serpentine Valley enough, but that's important too. No,
it was one of those amazing, it's probably the best example of Serpentine River with, sort of the anastomoses over the landscape. So you had this wide landscape of moorlands, of khaki moorland, really rich in species and turning purple in spring and summer with melaleucas, and then a line of rainforest, a sinuate line of rainforest throughout this moorland, carrying the water down to Lake Pedder, and a whole lot of other wetlands, including Lake Edgar, which was a fault-dammed wetland very close to the Lake Edgar Dam, which is very interesting in itself. And the landscape is a landscape of outstanding natural significance, I think. It sort of epitomises it. If you think of flat-floored valleys going up into craggy mountains, that's the archetypal one. We have others that are smaller. We have other lakes that are smaller. But we don't have something like Lake Pedder of the scale, or of that valley of the same scale that it possesses.
You found with some of your, present students that the concept of restoring Pedder offers a sense of hope, or that there's been, extra movement in the idea to restore Pedder in more recent years?
Well, some of my students are working towards restoring Lake Pedder, yes, which is which hasn't manifested itself for a while. When I first taught here, Kevin Kiernan was one of my students, and he was, of course, the Lake Pedder Action Committee person and wrote a book on Lake Pedder. But just recently, people like Tobias Burrows and others have been working to restore Lake Pedder. I think we just have to turn things around. I mean, the ridiculous economic growth has to get back to a level, has to be, well, we have to degrow to be able to live on the planet securely, and we can bring back, in the process of degrowth, we'll have a lot of resources to spend, because 20% of our resources go into making things to make other things. That's what growth is. So we have that 20%, we could put a itty bitty of that 20% into restoring things that would need restoration. Not that I think that you'd need much to get Lake Pedder back to looking really good, to do it by itself.
How long do you think it would take from when the water was, from when the impoundment was dewatered until there was just some primary revegetation starting to appear?
Well, judging from the apron of the adjacent Lake Gordon, it happens really quickly. Yeah, just within years. Yeah, but seeing that the peat's mostly there, and if you lower the water slowly, you're not going to wash away the peat. It'll happen really quickly, because you get things like marchantiers coming in and covering it to start off with and holding it together, and then you get the other things coming in. The only intervention really is needed is to get things in that haven't got a surviving soil seed store and aren't dispersed by birds or wind. Yeah. And then they'll sort themselves out.
Enormous thanks to Jamie for all of his time and his decades of work, and for inspiring within everybody that he spoke to the need for the protection and restoration of place. Thanks to Dan Bruin for recording the interview, the new Restore Pedder campaign coordinator, Maddie McShane, and Restore Pedder convener, Christine Milne, for bringing together this special episode of Pedder Unplugged. As always, if you want to learn more about the Pedder campaign, head to lakepedder.org. That's where you can get involved in helping restore this global gem of outstanding universal value. I'm Tabitha Badger. Thanks for listening. Hopefully we'll put up a few other interview recordings from the film in the not too distant future. Let's get on with it. For Jamie, for Hilary, for Melva, for everybody who had the enduring hope, that unbreakable belief that we will restore Lake Pedder.